Hey, so I want to welcome back Dr. Raphael, and I'd like to welcome the audience. This is the Hope and Wellness podcast. I am your host, Dropping Dimes, and I am the Hopeful Romantic. And this is Dr. Raphael, the good doctor. She is the proprietor and owner of Totality Wellness. We're bringing everybody here today because we have a super interesting topic. And I really wanted to run it by Dr. Raphael. And I know she does couples therapy, so she is bound to have run across this issue once or twice, or maybe a lot in her practice. The topic today is sex, but we're not just going to talk about sex in the sense of the physical act. We're going to talk about it in terms of its importance within a relationship. We're going to talk about how you overcome bad sex, or how you overcome the lack of sex in different areas, and we can go down that road. We're also going to talk about how you communicate your desires and how you let people know what you want and how you make those desires clear. But we're also going to talk about setting boundaries, because not everything that your partner wants and unfortunately needs is something that you're capable of giving them, or that you want to give them, or that feels good. So we're also going to talk about that. But first off, we're going to start off with our own little wellness check. And I'm going to ask Dr. Raphael, how you feeling today? How's everything?
I'm feeling great today. It's a rainy day, but I love rainy days because it's growth. Like we need water, we need a refresher. So I'm happy about today. Thank you.
Nah, it's a pretty cool way of looking at it. Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
an opportunity for growth. You know, a lot
Yeah,
of people will look outside and be like, oh, it's a rainy day. I'm tired. I'm sleepy. I'm one of those people. I look at it. This is cuddle weather. This is,
right.
man, this
Like,
is lay up, watch some TV, a good Netflix show, and
right,
just kind of hang ten. But so
right.
yeah,
Slow
definitely.
down.
Well, I wanted to know. Let's start off here. How often do you see? How often does the topic of sex come up as like the center of something that's going on in an
Well,
issue, like a relationship issue?
yeah, well, I the a big part of my practice is that I see people who struggle with sexual trauma. Usually, these people are entering a new relationship, or they're in a relationship and they're having these intimacy issues because they're still struggling with the trauma that they experienced. And sometimes they feel like boxed in sexually. So, a lot of times I get clients that come in and their first issue or primary issue is lack of intimacy, a lack of sex. And when we get the conversation going, it turns out that it's deeper than sex. It's about communication. It's about boundaries. It's about, really communicating how you experience your sexuality. And a lot of times, um, I find just in my own personal life with my friends and in my practice that a lot of people don't really sexually explore within themselves and understand that part of them because it's taboo in this world that we live in. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember they told me my palms would get hairy and all other kinds of stuff, or I go blind if I
Yeah.
can't. There was all kinds of games people would play with my head when I was younger. But
Yeah.
okay, so look, let's take this angle first, right? Because I know the mental aspect of it. I know you know the emotional aspect of it. I want to talk to you about things that I'll see on the internet,
Okay.
right? And there's things like that. Yeah, you that'll come up, and you'll see something like men will complain that if people will complain if they're not getting it at home. Right? And it's funny I'm saying that because a lot of the questions that I get are down that avenue. They're like, I'm not. They kind of try to justify or lead me into telling them it's okay to look for it outside if they're not getting it at home. You know, and what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel like when you hear that? You're like, is there ever a situation where somebody has cut them off so bad, right? That you're like, well, unfortunately, at this point, they're gonna have to go look for something, or are you more like, no, you laid your bed, now you got to lie in it?
Well, I mean, are you asking if I think it's okay to do that?
Yeah, knowing what men need. Let's say for men, knowing what men need when it comes to sex, okay, in a relationship,
Mhm.
and not only is, let's say, the partner not willing to work on her issues, but she's also weaponizing sex.
Right.
Are you then like, what is a man supposed to do in that kind of?
Well, I think there's different ways to approach it. I think you have to give into consideration if this was my client, their culture, their goals, their struggles, what they've overcome. But overall, my intent, and I think each of our individual intents is to be happy, and he is not happy. So I think what he will seek is happiness, or whatever form that is. I don't think it's right to do that. Within a relationship, I think the hardest part is for him to come to that terms and to communicate that, not necessarily give an ultimatum, but to say it's a choice. It's either we fix this, or I need this to be happy in my life and I have to end it and move on. I think it's bigger than doing it. It's if this person has children, if the family they created, they could be breaking or hurting a situation or making it worse by holding a lie or being dishonest. So the hardest part is to be honest and say, you're not giving me what I want. And I'm about to go get it. Because, I have had relationships in situations, not my personal relationships, but in my practice that I've seen that sometimes on different situations, people have come to have open relationships and are okay with living their lives that way. That's not for everyone, but that might be an option if you were just honest. But for me, it's the doing more damage part. Like, is this going to eventually or potentially hurt your entire thing that you've built with this person? Or is it something you're ready to risk? If it's something you're ready to risk, then you're an adult. Do you?
Okay, I have a follow up question. Can a relationship overcome bad sex?
Yes, absolutely. I believe. I
What
believe
What
so.
are some of the keys to being able to overcome bad
I
sex?
think the number one thing is this person or the victim per se on the receiving side has to acknowledge that they love this person and they're going to try to make it work no matter what. It has to
What
start with that.
happens? Okay, but what happens when, let's say, man, woman? Okay, the woman's the one that's not being satisfied,
Mm-hmm,
and the man's ego doesn't let him acknowledge that anything is wrong.
mm-hmm.
Can it survive that, or is it a situation where, as long as communication is there? Because I feel like if the communication is there, or if two people trust each other and it's open, it can survive.
Yeah.
But I feel like if somebody's being one side is being stubborn, or one side is being shut down, they shut down and act like there is no problem.
Hmm.
I don't think it can survive. I don't think
Right.
it can.
It's a
I feel
matter
like,
of how long can it survive.
right. It's like, you know, the other thing is, you'll come across people where sex becomes a chore.
Right.
Sex becomes a chore, and you'll see people that are together for a long time, and she kind of looks at him or he looks at her, kind of like, all right, all right, let's just kind of like, I don't, I'd rather be watching TV, but
Right.
sure, why not? You know what I mean? You see that a lot. Um, what is some of the ways couples can keep that spark amongst each other? What is something they can do? Understanding that communication is so important, but what are some actual working, functioning, I don't want to call them drills, but like
Hmm.
things that they can do that can kind of reunite them, create that bond again?
Yeah. Well, where I come from therapeutically, if you ask me from my therapist point of view, I'm a CBT therapist. So I believe that behaviors are not changed at the behavior, but they're changed at the thought, right? So it's thoughts connected to feelings, connected to behaviors, right? So I think the first thing in that is just addressing the thought, you know? Um, the fact is like, you know, can we pause real quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What was the last question that you asked? I kind of like lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay. The last question was, how can somebody overcome? We were talking about overcoming bad sex,
Uh-huh.
right? And then we were talking about if one person doesn't acknowledge it,
Mhm,
and the other one is stuck in their ways, like, and they
mhm.
just don't want to deal with it. and you were talking about thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So it was more so about basically changing your thinking. I don't know
Mhm.
if I take
There
you
was
back to
something
the
else that you said that I was gonna connect to that, because you said if that person doesn't wanna change or wanna acknowledge, then
right.
I completely lost my train of
No,
thought.
it's all right. It's all right.
Gonna
It's
be
all right. It
so
happens.
good too because it was gonna connect. I think I was what I was doing was getting back to the idea that the person has to challenge that thought or no, I found it. It was be curious. Like, oh, now I know what it was. It was like, how can they have better sex or how can they overcome better sex or maintain good sex throughout the
Right.
relationship?
Yeah. There
And
you
I
go.
was getting to maintaining curiosity, right? So like we have to address it in the thought. Like you have to maintain curiosity. That's what we learn in therapy. We learn as therapists is to never like how you overcome assumptions is to remain curious. Like you are not what you present. People are deeper than that. So like when it comes to sexuality, it's like you got to maintain curiosity when it comes to sexuality. Your partner may not have been into anal when you guys met like 10 years ago, but that doesn't mean that you can't, communicate about it or talk about it or ask about it. Maintain that curiosity. You know what I'm saying?
It's great because when I talk to men, right, a lot of times it's so funny you said anal and stuff like that. Like a lot of times when men complain, they complain about physical acts. They don't complain about the emotional connection. And I kind of fall back and I'm like, no, I think it's a little bit of both. With men, a lot of times people will say, oh, it's just a physical act for men. They just want to get on top, especially when women are complaining about it. Oh, he just wants to get on top, do his business. And a lot of it to me is, yeah, you'll have that. But there's also men that they look, unfortunately, they feel loved when you have sex with them. They do
Mm,
feel loved. It's like you telling them, "Oh, I like you. I want you." It's that stroke of the ego that they need to
mhm.
remember, like, "Oh, she still wants me. I'm still wanted. I'm still the
Right.
alpha male out here." Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you'll get these guys that they start to get into their feelings because their wives won't do certain things.
Mm,
And in my book, I talk about it, and I'm like, uh, okay, look, if there's two important things. Number one is trust, and I talk about trust heavily. And you'll always get the guy that says, "My wife trusts me with her life. My wife trusts me." I, I'm not saying your wife doesn't trust you. Your wife trusts you outside of the bedroom, but you have to gain trust inside of the bedroom. She has to know that anything you're doing is her sexual satisfaction, her pleasure is at the forefront, that it's a priority. A lot of times when you'll ask a man if he's tried certain things or if he's done certain things, see what I find is a lot of us, we learned a lot about sex through pornography. Through pornography. All right. So a lot of our sexual stuff is about dominance and the way it looks and how we want to feel. And I always tell guys, I'm like, buddy, that's a bad approach because you got to remember that's fiction. That's not real. Even her reaction isn't real. All that is fake. It's
mhm.
produced. It takes a lot of people, and trust me, that's not the emotion you're producing in her. You know what I mean? And trust me, you'll know what I mean when she tries to put a finger up your, and all of a sudden you bug out. You know what I'm saying? So just like you don't like it, you don't feel comfortable. You got to understand that there's a range where she doesn't feel comfortable and she's not happy. So what I decided to do was kind of explain it this way. I used to be a gym teacher. And when I teach men to introduce fantasies, I teach them to introduce it the same way I would introduce a new game as a gym teacher. As a gym teacher, my first couple of days, let's say it was football, it was these really easy, simple drills, like how to throw a ball, some of the rules, um, and we would repeat those for the first 2 or 3 days. Now, for those first 2 or 3 days, the kids that knew how to play football hated it. Oh, this is not fair. I just want to play. Can we just get to play? But those drills weren't for the kids that knew how to play. Those drills were for the kids that did not know how to play. So that on day 4 and 5, when it was time to play the game, everybody could enjoy it.
Mm,
So I share that with these men. I'm like, you really need to take the approach of a gym teacher. Introduce things slowly, right? Introduce the rules to your fantasy. Introduce portions of your fantasy slowly, patiently. Let her get the gist of them. Enjoy them. Find the pleasure in them. That way, when you want to really partake in it to the level you want to partake in it, it's fun for everybody. And if it's fun for everybody, she will participate. If it's not, she won't. You're not understanding. What you want to do is you want to rush in, and you have this picture in your head that you're this big porn star, and you're going to ram it down an area that doesn't feel comfortable. And it doesn't work that way, you know? And then you go into techniques. Okay, what about patience? Tell me about your patience. How long from A to Z do you think it takes to do that act that you're looking for? And I'm not concentrating in particular act. Let's just talk in general. Well, how long do you think that takes? Oh, no, I took like a whole hour. Oh, you said it like that's something, like a whole hour. Really? Oh, okay, cool. So you're taking a long trip in a car. You're driving to New Jersey. All right. You would want your mechanic, right? You tell him, look this car over. I'm taking it on a long trip. You would want him to look for it for 15, 20. Okay, you're good. Go ahead, you can go. Or do you want him to check the oil patiently, rotate the tires? Do you want him to do all these things to prepare that car for that road trip? And with doing that, now guys are like, oh, so I need to take my time. I'm like, trust, time, education equals fantasy. Mm-hmm. It equals the fantasy. That's my formula. That's how I try to put it out there. And patience, a lot of patience. Because believe it or not, it may be your fantasy, but you're no expert. And you're not that great at it. So just because it's your fantasy, it doesn't mean you know what you're doing. You know? And those are the things that I try to put out there. And, for the most part, guys receive it well. You know what I mean? But, again, at the end of the day, they're men.
Right. Yeah, I think that people learn things when they're ready.
Do they ever? All right. So now, what are some of the things you could do to overcome bad sex? I remember off air we talked about a situation, and we were talking about like a micro penis type thing, and you were like, "Yo, what is it? Let's say it again."
I hope my friend watches this. She's so open. She would share, but she calls it a lemon penis.
He has a lemon penis. So unfortunately, she's not getting any type of satisfaction, any type of whatever. Can you overcome that though? Like, what do you do? How do you? I mean, I think first and foremost, you have to be honest with yourself, right? I think first, let's start there. If he's not connecting, if you're not concentrating on other ways that you are connecting, and the only part of it is the physical is the priority, I would start to think that maybe that person is checking out a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I feel like when you're fully in tune, when you're fully in with somebody, and you're there with them, and they cover so many of the bases that you have, emotionally, spiritually, like they cover so many of your bases that you're willing to go to the end of the earth and work and figure it out and put it a little bit on the back burner to make it work. Am I off on that?
When you were saying that, in my mind, I snapped to, I was telling a client, instead of making a checklist on the things that she wants from her partner, to do a pie chart, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know the difference between a pie chart and
yeah, absolutely.
So, because I think that, in a sense, people think that money, a good job, sexuality, you put it like a list like this. But I feel like for some people, certain things are more important than others. So for me, sex might be 50% of my pie chart, and for another woman, her pie chart might be a 1/4 or a third or whatever the case may be. So that's how I look at it mentally. For me, it's like, even in the case with the friend, I don't know if I would make the same decisions as she would, being my experiences with having someone that was great sexually, but not there in all the other cases. For me, my priority would not necessarily be that. And I think that maybe I would work harder or differently to make that sexual piece work. But I don't know, because I am not in the situation. And I know my friend to be a very good person. So for her to get to the point where she's like, I don't want to hurt this guy, and I am not strong enough to tell him that sexually it's not there. She is at this decision where she's, deciding that she might have to break up and move on.
Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like anytime I've come across a situation like, and the person is like, all right, so this is the way I think about it. Maybe I'm completely off on this. I when I think of a car, right, I think of the engine, the transmission. I think of vital parts of the car, and then I think of parts of the car that are like an add-on that are an addition, like a nice interior, a good stereo system, spacious trunk, a color. There's things that aren't as prioritized to me, right? And I find that when a woman is in a healthy, loving relationship, she prioritizes the engine, the transmission. These things are like whatever, right? And she'll work towards the other stuff. But when she's kind of already mentally checked out, she don't care what that engine look like, what the transmission sounds like. That color is off. I don't want it. That interior is off. I don't want it. So I kind of feel like there's two situations. If she's invested and she's in, she'll work. If she's already checking out, then she knows that no. Because
as a woman, if you're already thinking about breaking up, you're checking out. Because
breaking out.
Just from my experience being a woman, I will go every place besides break up until I'm absolutely like, damn, like, and even at that point, it's still like kind of thinking about it. So for me, it's like, yeah, like at that point, yeah.
I always talk about, this is one of my like pillars when I talk to guys. Do not fear the noise, fear the silence. Do not fear the noise, fear the silence. I always say this. I've been in situations where, I've done stupid shit. I get to the house and my stuff is spread out all over the front lawn. And all I could think in my head is, she still loves me. I'm going to get her back. But I've also been in situations where I get back to the house and my stuff is packed neatly on the side of the house where it can't get wet or stolen. And I just go grab my stuff, put it back in the car and leave. So I'm like, oh, it's over. It's done. Because women will tell you, they'll tell you, and they'll talk to you, and they'll verbalize how they're feeling. And you'll sit there and you'll be like, oh my God, all you do is talk and yell and bitch and moan. And what you don't realize is that's the period of time that she's telling you, hey, buddy, I'm telling you what it is, and I'm closing the door on you. And then when they're quiet, the guys are like, oh, okay, she stopped talking. Whatever. And then she leaves. And the guys are sitting there talking about, but what happened? What do you mean what happened? And then here's the best part about it. The best part about it is you break up with, and I've experienced this. This is crazy because I'm laughing about. I can laugh about it now. You break up with a woman, and for the first 4 to 6 weeks, you can't keep it in your pants. Really? You are flying around town trying to put it in whatever hole you can find. Ew. Why? Because all you're trying to do is put that Band-Aid, that proverbial Band-Aid on what really needs stitches. You're not dealing with your emotions. You're saying to yourself, no, trying to look for replace what you were missing. You're out there swinging. What happens 4 to 6 weeks out? You are crying in your pillow because you miss your ex and you're calling her, trying to find her, and I want you back. Why? Because you didn't deal with your emotions. You didn't deal with your feelings. You covered them up and you didn't deal with them. Women will talk to their friends, to people, let them know what's going on in their mind, in their heart. And as that checkout process comes, so now 4 weeks out, a month out, some women are in a whole new relationship. And the guy's sitting there, how could she be in a new relationship? Oh my God, was this a lie? She didn't love me? Mm-hmm. And you're like, no, buddy, what you don't realize is that she mentally checked out and broke up with you a month, 2, 3 months before she left you. So she has a good 5-month head start on the healing process. You know what I mean? So you've been broken up 4 weeks. She's been broken up about 6 months. And that's why it's easy for her to transition into the next relationship. And no, she did love you. And that's why she bitched. That's why she moaned. That's why she was there. That's why she asked you. And then one day she looked at you and said, I have no more ask left in me. I'm done. and you walk away. I learned that lesson. I learned it the hard way.
I mean,
I
that was
kind of,
literally my situation yesterday. It was,
yeah,
where did this come from? It's like, you know what? Talk to someone, and I've been kind of like mentally preparing for this. I'm gonna just keep it moving, you know.
right.
And it was like,
That's how it goes. Yeah, man. You see what I'm talking about? It's like, yo, you. How many times do I have to say it? How many ways do I have to say it? And that leads me into this part of it. That's why I tell guys, I'm like, yo, dude, brother, take a proactive approach. Don't take a reactive approach in communicating with your lady. You know what I mean? Because you will sit there and complain about the accident, but never talked about how you never addressed the brakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really need to start taking a proactive approach. She's talking to you. I have in my book, I talk about a scenario where uh, a friend of mine was asking her husband, there was a new Broadway show.
mm-hmm.
She wanted to go to the Broadway show.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, like hinting at it, talking, hey, look, that show's out. Hey, that show came out. Do you know that show? Oh my God, it's getting such good. And every day she would tell him a little something about the show. That Friday night comes, and she's getting all dolled up and beautiful, and her friends are coming over, and they're going to go to the show. And he's sitting there, but we're not going to dinner. We're not going to do. What do you mean? Oh, what you just? And he comes to me and he's bitching and moaning that she's leaving. And I know the situation. And I look at him. I'm like, the ball's on you. The ball's on you. This woman has been talking about this show for 6 weeks, telling you that she wants to go, and only talking to you about it, because she never talked to me about it. She didn't talk to these people about it. She talked to you. And now, because you ignored all that communication, you kind of dismissed it. Now she's leaving you here, sitting, watching TV on a Friday night, and you're wondering what's going on. You need to take a proactive approach. When they approach you on, the reason they're communicating with you is because they love you. So woman, communication equals love. She could literally talk to anybody. She could talk to friends. She could talk to family. She has sisters. She understands how to solve her own problems. You're not in there to solve her problems. When she comes home from work and tells you about her day at work, she knows that she could have gone to HR. She knows the recourse she could have taken. She knows all that. She's not looking for that from you. She's looking for you to listen and just pay attention. And she's going to vent to you, and she's going to talk. That's why when a woman comes home and she asks her man, hey, how was your day at work? He usually goes, I was all right. And then what she really wants him to do is ask her, how was your day at work? And then she's like, well, Sheena, she works register 4. She's trying to take my job, and she goes in and talks for a good 45 minutes an hour. What is she saying? It's a poorly wrapped compliment. She's saying, I love you. I love you. You're the man that has my attention. You're the man I want to speak to, And I don't think men register that enough.
Yeah.
They don't register that enough. What the communication means to a woman. Silence to a man doesn't mean anything. When we're quiet, we can be thinking about, damn, the Jets won the other night. Oh, man. And women will look at us like something's wrong because they understand what silence means to them. When they're silent, that means they're checking out. So in their mind, if a man is silent, and you'll hear that a lot with married women, they'll talk to you. They'll be like, he doesn't talk to me. He doesn't communicate. He doesn't talk. Oh my God, I want to know about his feelings. We don't operate like that. We don't. Like, for the most part, we don't. I've learned to become a communicator and to share, because now I understand what my silence means to my partner. I don't want her to feel neglected. I don't want her to sit there and wonder what's in my thoughts. I want to eliminate that and let her know, no, you're secure. You have a secure place in my heart and in my mind. So I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling. I'm going to be vulnerable with you. I'm going to let you know. And I tell women this all the time. Like, I don't know if you probably get that a lot about communicate. The husband doesn't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And what I try to relay is this. Men have a process. And again, not everybody's process is the same. Some people go out and fix stuff. Some people concentrate, work, they dive into work, whatever fashion they choose to manifest the process. But it's a process that we go through. We go through this process where we trim the fat on a problem when we're in a relationship. And we do that in part selfishly because we want to avoid a lot of that bitching and moaning.
Right.
So we want to avoid a little bit of that bitching and moaning. But let me okay. What we'll do is this. We'll go outside. Let's say the car doesn't start. If the car doesn't start, I'll look at it and say, oh shit, all right, let me check the oil, let me check the There's that everything that's in my capacity to check, I check it. And
Mhm.
once I do that, then I come in. If none of that worked, I'll tell you about the car. Hey, listen, we might need to get some mechanics because da 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 da.
Right.
But what would I look like if I walked in after taking 5 seconds, come inside? Oh my God, we're gonna need a new car. Da, 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 only to find out that the car was out of gas.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I let women know. I'm like, listen, let him go through his process, let him trim the fat, and he will come to you, but he's gonna come to you on his timeline. If you try to push him, it looks like this. And then all of a sudden she's like, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to me? And he has to start over. And it doesn't work. We're kind of running a little low on time here. Let's
Mhm.
I do want to touch on this one last thing.
Okay.
Can we talk about communicating your desires? What do you think is the most important thing when it comes to communicating your desires?
Know your own desires. Because
That's
I think
good.
that like I said, I don't think that we sexually explore with ourselves enough, especially a lot of us minority people were raised really super Christian, right? And a lot of other religions have, this whole taboo view on sexuality and sex, right? So I think that alone sometimes blocks us from exploring sexually. So I say, masturbate, understand what makes you feel good, and be with yourself, in any capacity or whatever that means to you intimately, right? Whatever you would want your partner to do to you, do to yourself first, right? And see how, your body reacts to it. If it feels good, continues. If it doesn't, then stop and do something else, right? And I think that exploring yourself more, you could guide that person on what exactly you want. So many times people like, well, they said this, but I don't know exactly how to do it or what they want me to do. And they want me to be more, to do more foreplay, but I don't really understand. It's more of an even intimate, more like process when instead of telling a person, you show them, right? Touch me here, squeeze me there, things like that. But I think
Okay,
they really
and
start with yourself.
I think that's phenomenal advice. That is
Mhm.
phenomenal advice. Um, I have one last one, and it's how do you set boundaries? Because there's times where some husbands, some wives, they don't want to participate in it. It does not come naturally. It's not something that will ever come naturally. How do you set boundaries without making somebody feel unloved?
Boundaries have to be communicated, and boundaries are really for yourself, right? Because the load of boundaries is that you have to maintain them because people are going to, cross it. And you have to be like, hey, no, that's my boundary. Please don't do that. And I think it's just like how it's done. If you do it with empathy, right, with love, and that's why communication is a huge part of this because you have to communicate why that boundary is there or feel vulnerable or in a safe space to say, hey, I don't like to be, I'll give a really horrible example, but I don't like anal because I had a really bad sexually experience with that, right? And that's the barrier that we need to break, to talk about that experience and see if there's a possibility
Ah,
to make this better, right? Could we do it differently? Oh, that was a sexual traumatic experience, but we're trying to do something different.
right,
So
right.
that's my stilo on
Listen,
it.
once again, you killed it. I want to say thank you so much. That was phenomenal. Always with some great insight. Some of the things we could take away: get to know yourself before you request and you're asking for fantasies and different situations. Understand who you are. I love the conversation about boundaries. That was beautiful.
Mhm.
And hopefully, we help some couples that'll sit and listen to this because I know I come across a lot of people that have these issues, and I come across a lot of men. Man, hopefully, they
Oh
listen
yeah.
to my piece on communication, only because of I think that's where it starts, and that's where that's the genesis of great sex is
Mhm.
that communication. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Hope and Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Dropping Dimes, and this is your host, Dr. Raphael with Fatality Wellness. I'm going to drop her link down below. If at any point
Yes.
in time you have some questions, I'm going to put her email down there. You can send her an email. As always, I will put my email, my information. You could always DM me or send me a message. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.